Hello and welcome to today's Poetry Dumpling. My name's Jude and I'm one of the librarians for Kirklees Libraries. And I'm joined on screen with Angela, who's one of my colleagues in Kirklees Libraries as well. Before I get started, I'll just tell you a tiny bit about Poetry Dumpling. So, what is it? It's a live online poetry event brought to you by Kirklees Libraries. We're showcasing local poets, bringing poetry to wider audiences, connecting people with local writers groups, and giving writing groups and spoken word poetry groups a platform to perform their work. The name Poetry Dumpling came about when Angela and I had a conversation about how we thought that every culture around the world had some form of dumpling as part of their menu, including, so for example, we've got dim sum in China. I'm going to ask Angela to say the other one that's in Poland. Pierogi in Poland, momos in Nepal. And we love the connection between poetry and food. And we were thinking about how poetry can be nourishing, especially during lockdown, which has obviously been quite a difficult time for all of us. Kirklees Libraries have a large collection of poetry, e-books, e-audiobooks, and now that the libraries are open for sort of safe browsing, you can find out about the opening times on the library's website. You can also borrow the paper copies from the libraries. We've got poetry from Homer, Persian poets Rumi and Hafez. We've got English romantics right up to contemporary poets such as Ocean Vuong, one of my favourites. The library's free to join, so you just go to kirkleeslibraries.co.uk. I'll just bring the details of that up for you. And I'll just bring you the details of where you can borrow the ebooks from, and that's from overdrive.com, kirklees.overdrive.com. So I'll pass you over to Angela to tell you about the special poetry dumpling for Refugee Week and a little bit about what Refugee Week is.
Hi, thanks, Jude. So, yeah, it's really exciting tonight that we've got this tonight's Poetry Dumpling, a special event for Refugee Week, a UK-wide festival celebrating the contributions, creativity and resilience of refugees and people seeking sanctuary. Kirklees continues to be a place of welcome, and on a daily basis, support is provided to those who are seeking protection, and we call this Kirklees Welcomes. So the theme for this year's Refugee Week, UK-wide festival, is We Cannot Walk Alone, which is taken from Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech. Now, research shows that reading books and poetry is a great way to step into someone else's shoes, which invites us to focus on how we can walk alongside one another. So we've curated recordings of 4 poets for you this evening, and these are exciting young poets who've written about displacement and identity, which we think help us to reflect on the migrant experience.
Well, partly because I know that you'd come across an article, Angela, that was suggesting they were great poets to listen to. So we had a listen, and I agree, they are great poets, all very different, all telling their own stories in very different ways, using different words, different themes, but all coming together under the same sort of umbrella, I guess.
It would have been ace if we could have had them live performing for us tonight, but unfortunately we couldn't because, yeah. So anybody out there who would like to join us for Refugee Week next year and you're a budding poet, get in touch with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Kirklees, I'm just going to see if we've got the, yeah, I'm just trying to think whether we've got the email address up here, actually.
Right.
But if you go to kirkleeslibraries.co.uk, you'll be able to find a way to contact us in there. we've got the children's one, which I can reel off, but it probably isn't the best one for people to go to. So did anything particularly strike you from those YouTube videos, and that that you thought, oh, there was something very special about it, or that you kind of changed maybe the way you thought about something? Or
Well, I remember when I first heard the quote from Worcestershire about nobody puts their children in a boat, or nobody puts their baby in a boat unless this land is more dangerous than the sea. And that really stuck with me, and I was able to use it when I was confronted with people with different opinions to me about how we should be treating people seeking sanctuary to England, who were maybe not as positive about it as perhaps we are at Kirklees Libraries. So I was able to say, look, nobody puts their children in a boat unless it is really dangerous. Would you get in a rubber dinghy with your baby, with your week-old baby, unless, where you were coming from was far more dangerous than stepping into that boat?
yeah,
So, for me, that's a great way how poetry can be used to educate and to persuade people and to make people stop and think and, put yourself in someone else's shoes.
exactly. That's what I was thinking about. Put yourself in someone else's shoes and
Mm,
maybe understand somebody else's experience by listening carefully to the spoken word and the choice of the words that people have, and the way that they can. I mean, they were all great at performing their words in
mhm,
very
mhm.
different ways, like some more quietly, some more active and faster. And
Yeah.
it was a joy to listen and watch them. Most of them I've listened to like at least once before, and the
Mm,
more I listen to them, the more I enjoy them, because I hear something different and I catch the rhythm in a different way and the different words, and yeah, really great way of, yeah, really great stuff. And I know, what do you think about poetry for finding your voice? Do you think it's quite a good way to begin to share life experiences, or maybe jot things down and have a go? Or could it just be about the garden and what you see out there?
I'm not perhaps not the right person to ask that question to. I think maybe we should
When
put
we
that
get the
question
poets
to the
on a bit
poets.
later,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, because we
I
have
think
got some poets coming up
thinking
soon.
about language though, Jude, the idea that language is connects us, doesn't it? So, if you come to I think it was J.J. Bowler who talked about stepping off the boat, and how they were seeking refuge, but they were called refugees, and they hid themselves inside our language.
Mm.
And I thought that was just such a great expression for how difficult it must be to be seen as a person when you don't speak the language very well. We tend to think of someone as an asylum seeker or a refugee or someone seeking sanctuary, and that becomes who they are to us when we meet them. But the reality is, they are so much more than that. They have had far more other experiences as well in their lives that we can't always see because they're hampered by, excuse me, their gaining language skills. Sorry, I'm
Yes.
just gonna.
So having a conversation with people easily to start with, maybe quite difficult. And finding out more about them as a person, and just sharing everyday kind of chatter about things can prove a barrier. I mean, we all know when we go abroad, and maybe we don't speak the language of where we are, and however hard we might try, it's, it's quite difficult, isn't it? And we're automatically
Yeah.
struggling to communicate, and people can
Yeah.
see very much that even
Yeah.
when I go on a writing thing, and it's run in America, and they notice straight away about my accent, that obviously they don't know it's a northern accent, but straight away I can feel that people go, "Oh, I love your accent. Where are you from?" So it automatically puts you a little bit outside of that room, doesn't it, in a way? And that's nothing compared to not being able to speak the actual language. And also, coming from a country where you've had to escape to seek sanctuary somewhere else, yeah, that's just, I try very hard to put myself in people's shoes, but the more I read, the more I listen. I mean, today we watched a film. I'll just bring details about that. That was something else that was for Refugee Week, where one of the simple acts that Refugee Week are suggesting we do is watch a film, and they've got a whole list of movies there. Some of them are feature length and some of them are short films. And today we watched a short film with a wonderful man called Mosen today, Mosen, and today, who is part of Angela's Conversation Cafe that runs every fortnight, is it, Ange?
It runs twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays
Twice a week.
between
Great.
1 and 2. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I had hoped Mosen would join us, but he's just messaged me to say he hasn't got the link, so I don't know what's happening there. Anyway.
Oh, shame. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe in the coffee break we could send it again. So yeah, that was
Yeah.
just a few bits of details about the the English Conversation Cafe that happens twice a week. And Angela's email is on there, angela.varley@kirklees.gov.uk. So if anybody wants to join in, or knows of somebody who might want to join in, then do get in touch with Angela, because it's great. I know the people who are there already will testify to how good it is. As they did today. Yay. So we watched the film today, and we had a great conversation about what the film was about. So with the films that are on Refugee Week, you can watch the film, you can download some questions and sort of discussion things. So one of the nice things about that is that, you can get together with somebody else, or maybe you can watch it and they can watch it at the same time. Maybe they're in their home, you're in yours, but you can communicate, have a chat, maybe over the phone or Zoom or whatever's easiest, and maybe just talk about the movie a little bit, or the short film. It was really good today because I felt that it changed my perspective. I learnt more today from both the conversation and the film that we watched. I thought it was great. And of course, we're here because of books too. So we have a sanctuary book collection as well that people can borrow. I'll just get that up as well. And you can go to overdrive.com. So we have a sanctuary book collection which has both fiction, non-fiction, both either chosen by or written by asylum seekers or sanctuary seekers and refugees. It's a great collection. We've got some for young people and some for adults, and there's a real breadth of things there. So you'll find that on the Kirklees Library's website, and you can have a little wander through what we call a curated collection. It's a collection of books, and it's called our Sanctuary Collection. And then if you're wanting to have a look at some poetry, you just go to kirklees.overdrive.com and you'll find the search box. I think it's in the right-hand corner, and if you just put poetry in there, it brings up numerous books that you can have a good scroll through, and hopefully you'll find something that you'll enjoy. And if you are watching this and you want to send any comments or questions across, do go into your chat box on Facebook, Twitter or YouTube, and they'll come directly to us. And if you're a writing group and you want a shout out, do just pop a message to us and we'll give you a shout out as well. And I know we've got some fantastic poets coming up. That's going to be coming up in a little bit of time. We've got John Duffy. I'm thinking of my friend's dog who's called Daphne. John Duffy, Stephanie Bowgett, and Julia Deakin, and they're from the Albert Poets, so they'll be joining us pretty soon as well. And we'll be having a bit of a conversation with them about Refugee Week, about poetry, and about the wonderfulness of writing and how you can begin to maybe start a little bit of writing yourselves if that's something that you're interested in. So let's have a little look. And I'll just get the details of the schedule up, which is we started off at 8:30 in conversation and we watched the poetry. We're having a coffee break at 20 past. I'm just thinking we might go for a coffee break maybe a tiny bit earlier, and then inviting the Albert Poets on to have a conversation. And then we could always have another coffee break if we wanted to for a couple of minutes then, and give people a chance to have a look at the Refugee website, the Refugee Week website, and have a look at the library books as well. What do you think, Ange?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yeah. So if we take a couple of minutes coffee break, I'll bring the information up and you can go and have a look at the Refugee Week website. You can have a look on Kirklees Together as well, because I know the council's put a lot of details about all the things that are happening throughout Kirklees on their website as well. And then if you pop along to overdrive.com, you might find a book to have a look at or a bit of poetry, and then we'll get ready to welcome the Albert Poets in probably about 5 minutes. Fingers crossed. Okay, hopefully we'll speak to you soon. I'll just get our banner up that just says that we're back soon. And there we go. And let's just pop the last banner up. Poetry Dumpling will be back soon. Okay, well, that was a nice little break. A nice little quick coffee break. And I was just popping back to just before we invite the Albert Poets back on, just to mention about our wonderful writer in residence. So we have a writer in residence at Kirklees Libraries. Her name is Christina Longdon. I'm just going to bring some details up about where you can find out more about Christina's website. If you we can go to the kirkleeslibraries.co.uk, which is our website. And if you click on the writer in residence, you'll be able to find out all about what Christina Longdon does, both as a writer and also as a writer in residence. She's done some fantastic events. So I think it's once every month that she does a different type of event. It can be anything from her adventures in writing, talking about the best type of writing, fact or fiction, writing for games, and she has also been in conversation with Kevin Duffy from Blue Moose Publishers, and he's based in Hebden Bridge, so pretty local, and published some really amazing books. So they're all really worth having a quick look at. The other thing you'll find there as well on the Writer in Residence page is details about local writing groups. And so we're going to welcome 3 members of one of the local writing groups, and it isn't just local, but they stretch much wider than local because they perform and publish and all sorts of things, but I'll let them introduce themselves when they come onto the screen. So first of all, we'll invite Stephanie Bowgett onto the screen. Hi, Steph.
Hello.
Hi, nice to see you. I'll invite John up as well. Hi, John.
Yes, John.
Nice
Hello,
to
John.
see you. And finally, we'll invite Julia on screen as well. Hi, Julia.
Hi, thank you.
How are you all? Are you doing okay?
Very well.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Very good.
Yes, thank you.
I know that you're all independent poets, but you all come together under the umbrella of Albert Poets as well, which I don't know whether anybody wants to just give a quick one sentence or more. I'm happy for more, but I don't know whether you are. But just a little brief outline about the Albert Poets. I'm sure everybody would be eager to know.
Kirklees 30 odd years ago used to run lots of writing groups, and Steph and I met in the group which used to meet in the library on Monday nights. Which was very enjoyable. And 4 of us decided after some time that really what we were so good
Yeah,
that it was very good reading for the group, but we wanted to do somewhere else. So the nearest pub to the library is the Albert, who agreed to let us do readings there. And we started that 26 years ago.
26 years now.
Yeah. And that has continued through various closures and lockdowns and management buyouts. And we hope it will start again. But then when all the groups closed, we gathered together the remnants of groups and started running our own workshops in the Albert for years. And currently meet in the Sportsman, where we ask people who are confident enough to bring along probably 10 copies of a poem and read it out, and it's discussed then, and it's a very, very fruitful and useful thing.
Wow. And is it open to people to get in touch with you and see about coming along, or is it people who feel like they're maybe they're used to writing and they're ready for somebody to have a look over the writing, or is it
I think it's better suited to people who are confident enough to have people discuss their work. But I mean, that varies with the individual. We've had some people come after they've been writing a couple of weeks and have been very happy to be there. And nobody has to go every week, and nobody has to stay for the whole session if they don't want to. We've had some people who come for half a session for a couple of times and build it up from there.
Wow.
But we also run readings when the Albert's open on the second Thursday of every month. And we have 4 invited readers with pauses in between. So that's quite often a nice chance for people to meet the people at the Monday workshop.
Oh, very good.
And see if they're comfortable.
I think we'll try and get some details from you to be able to put a bit of information up on the website, maybe around the writer in residence where it says about local writers groups, just so people are aware when things start opening up, what's going on and how they might be able to get joined in. And we're really pleased that you're able to join us today as a sort of pop-up poetry dumpling where, we just wanted some amazing poets to come and do the live mic section of it, and also maybe have a bit of a chat with us about poetry and maybe just have a conversation a tiny bit about Refugee Week. And I know I'd thought there might be a couple of questions to ask that what the Refugee Week website has, as they have a simple act which is called chat, and that suggests that you get together with people and just chat about a number of things, and I've chosen 3 of them today. We might only get through one, we might not get through, or we might get through all of them, but I thought it might be quite nice to just have a very brief little chat about this, and then maybe talk about any top tips or anything you have for people beginning to write their story. And I wondered whether the questions that we're going to just have a little look at, which I'll bring up on screen, might serve as a bit of a prompt if somebody was thinking that they'd like to do a bit of writing. You know, maybe they've been a bit inspired for today by the YouTube. When they've heard you, they might be even more inspired, or hopefully they will be even more inspired. So I thought these might work as some sort of prompts. So I'll start with this one. If you had to leave your home in a hurry, what would you take with you?
Too much is what and I thought about this, and I decided that I would take this cardigan, which was for me for my 50th birthday, and it is my favourite object in the world, and it's useful and it's beautiful, and it was made with love. So there you are.
Yeah, and you can wrap it round you, can't you? And it can be all cozy, I guess, as well. Yeah, cool. What about you, Steph?
I've thought about this as well, and I thought I should take really practical things, but I think the things I'd want to keep are I've got my great-great-grandmother's cookery books, which have got writing in from my great-great-grandmother and my great-grandmother. And they're kind of very personal notes and a link to that. And things like, I don't know, sort of documents, things that my dad's written and my mum's written to me. So I think I'd probably choose light things that were easy to carry, but were totally irreplaceable. And predictably words.
Yes, yeah, and things that possibly you couldn't replace.
Yeah.
That hold so many kind of memories and stories and recollections. Wow. What about you, Julia? Do you have any thoughts on?
It would be exactly those things that are unique and irreplaceable. And in my case, it would give me something to pass the time, a lot of time actually, and that would be my diaries. They are not that big because I wrote them in kind of minute Charlotte Bronte handwriting for the last, I have done for the last 20 years or so. I've kept a diary all my life, so I've got one from me age 6. It's not very informative, but I might keep that. It's an Enid Blyton diary, and but certainly if I took even just 10 years of diary, it would take me a long time to read them, and so I'd probably need to take a magnifying glass as well. But also I think I'd take 1 or 2 treasured mementos of my mum and dad and my sister. Mum and dad have not been with us for a long time, and my sister has has had a difficult life, and I have some very treasured items, cards and things associated with them that I would want to keep with me.
Wow. Yeah.
But whether I'd be able to find these things, you know, is another matter, and I might end up taking something completely useless just because I couldn't find them.
Yeah, I know. I think I'm with John. I would just take too much. I think I wouldn't know what to leave behind. I'll probably spend way too long trying to decide what to take. But yeah, I know that I would take a piece of jewelry that came from a grandparent that was actually for my 18th. So I know exactly where that is. So I would. It's not worth anything. It's just worth the memory and the fact that she gave it me. So I would probably just have to grab that and go from there. Sorry, John, did I interrupt you?
I was interrupting you. I set this question as a writing exercise years ago. If your house is on fire and you had to take something, and was working in a school in Morley, and I said, and it doesn't matter how heavy it is, you can take it away. And this 14-year-old boy said, since John gave me superhuman strength, I took the house across the road and sat and watched the fire burn itself out.
Exactly. You see, my first temptation would be to take my phone. That would be what I would grab for, because whenever I misplace it or I think I've lost it, I feel like I would have done many years ago when I just had a box full of photos and this and that and that. So I would be tempted to grab my phone, but then the battery would die, so you'd need a charger and blah, blah, blah. So it probably wouldn't be the best one. I'm just going to bring a quick comment on, because Mosen, who we spoke about a bit earlier and we watched a film with him, he's just sent us a message to say, hello, everyone. I like Kirklees Libraries, and we've said that thanks for watching, and yeah, thanks for watching. And his technology seems to have failed him, so unfortunately he wasn't able to join us this evening, but there'll be another evening I'm absolutely certain that he'll be able to join us for. So let me just get back out of there and we'll pop back to the second question. So what makes somewhere feel like home? Oh, I could bring Angela back on screen, actually. She's back on camera. Hi, Angela.
Hi.
You can join in now.
Yeah,
I felt like I'd sent you somewhere else.
That's all right. Hi.
So what makes somewhere feel like home?
As a child, I moved every 2 or 3 years. My father was a teacher, but he taught British Army children in Germany.
Oh, okay.
And so we never stayed put very long, and we moved all the time. And my mother got absolutely expert at packing. And one of the things she always had for the children, we always had special pillowcases and cuddly toys when we were younger, and those were always the things that were at the top of the packing for the children, so that when we went to sleep, we'd got something that we were very familiar with, and that was ours.
Yeah. So that would be something that would make it feel like home, sort of,
Yeah.
at least make it feel more like home straight away.
More like home.
What a great thing to do. You're just reminding me about my packing, which is usually atrocious, and I can never find the kettle, but I'm learning the more I do it. What about you, Julia? Is there anything that makes somewhere feel like home for you?
And I actually had a very similar experience to Steph. My parents moved several times, and it was always very jarring. And one of the things that can stop you feeling at home is your accent, I suppose, and sounding different from other people. Now, luckily, I was able to quickly pick up what the accent that I'd landed among, and as soon as I felt that I was passing myself off like that, I started to feel more at home in places, you know, when it wasn't a case of every time I opened my mouth people thought I was different. So that's one thing. Another thing is just somebody relating to you, so somebody who kind of makes it clear that they've noticed you and that they've an interest in your, at a very basic level, perhaps your physical comfort, and and a smile, of course. If somebody just smiles at you, that goes a long, long way.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. A smile does go a long, long way, even if it's, you don't even have to have a conversation sometimes when you're passing someone in the park, do you? And just to smile at somebody just makes them feel like they're noticed. And it can be the beginning of a conversation, can't it? That, just saying hello and things like that.
Yes, it's lovely when you go to Spain, for instance, and they just say hola, anybody that you don't know, and it's very welcoming.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's something well worth remembering, isn't it? When, especially in libraries and things like that, or in writers' groups, just that welcoming aspect of as soon as somebody walks in, they feel like you're pleased to see them, even if you've never met them before and stuff. So, what about you, John?
Well, I had a very settled childhood, so didn't move house at all till I was quite grown up. And I think this making soup and the smell of soup and the gathering together of things and the way that all soup smells of soup.
It does.
And I think that's very welcoming. I think, so that's something you're doing, which is bringing people together and feeding them, and also making your scent marks around the house.
Yeah.
Scent marks,
Yes, you can often have good conversations where people who may not want to talk about themselves, can talk about a little bit about food.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Food's a great one, isn't it? Really is. I go to stay with a friend when we're not in lockdown to Germany a lot, and breakfast is an enormous tradition in Germany, and the rest of the meal, I don't know whether it's for everybody, but it's for her. But she said it is a tradition. Everyone has a good breakfast and stuff, and then people just drop in and they kind of join you for breakfast if they're passing just to say hello. And it's just a wonderful social thing and we actually rang another friend who was in India. She was visiting family, and we invited her to join us for breakfast virtually, and it was just lovely, that connection that food can make as well. But
a very rewarding writing exercise that I have done. One particular time, I remember I wanted people to talk about themselves, but obviously if you ask people to talk about themselves, especially people who've had a kind of refugee experience, they may not want to for all sorts of reasons or be able to at the time, and that's absolutely fair enough. But sometimes if you simply ask them to talk about a small object which kind of might represent them, you get further. And one young woman brought in a tea bag, and she talked at length about some specific occasions when she'd drank tea and how important tea was as a regular part of her life, and when she felt bad and so on. And we learned a lot about her, and she was just holding this tea bag.
Wow.
Yes, Mary Matus has an exercise about how do you make tea and where do you drink it and so on, which led at one workshop to near blows about whether you put in milk first or second.
Everyone's very strongly has a strong opinion on tea.
But it was a very productive, it was very personal, and of course Mary's from Polish parentage, so she talked about making tea in Poland, which was totally different. It's really interesting.
And yet there's those commonalities again, isn't there, that we're drinking tea, we find comfort in tea or coffee. So those things that, even though we might have it differently, I know one of my mum's friends used to put the coffee ground in the pot and not strain it at all, but there'd always be the coffee grounds right at the bottom, and she knew to only pour it so far, and she had a real knack of doing it, and that's just what she'd always done. I think it was Guyana that she was from, and that's what they'd always done. But again, we were sharing the coffee and sharing the stories about why you do it like that and all the rest of it, so it's great. I don't think we're going to have time for the third question, because we're at 7:30 now, and I know we really want to do the live mic. I just wondered if there might be a very quick tip about if you were wanting to begin to write poetry. I know that's a big question, but I would say, you see, all I'd say is grab a pen and a piece of paper and just start writing what you think about. But I know that I'm not a poet, so I'm over to you if you've got any quick tips to begin to write poetry.
Read poetry as well.
Read it.
Yeah.
And listen.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And exercise I used to use for people the very first time is to say, the first thing I remember.
Oh, wow.
Writing from that. And it could be the very first thing you remember, or it could be the first thing you remember when you woke up, or it could be a made-up story. It could be something somebody told you. There's all sorts of directions it can go in. Getting something specific like that. Then if you have read something and you like it, or maybe you don't like it, how would you write it? You know, it's not there to be untouched. You can look at it and say, right, I'm going to show that Seamus Heaney something.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it helps when people start to just limit the number of words. You know, can you write about, I don't know, autumn in 10 words? Can you write about
very good, yeah.
And then if you've got a few 10-word poems, sometimes you can put them together and make a longer poem. But particularly for young people, it's less daunting somehow.
Yeah. Than
Although actually to write 10 good words is probably harder than writing 10 good pages.
But it's a way to keep repeating writing and finding the words that mean something more to you or sound better. Oh, hi, Anne.
Yeah, you just reminded me of in 2018, when it was the 20-year anniversary of Refugee Week. They had this thing about writing a 20-word poem that everybody could do, and I just thought that was really a really good introduction to writing.
And doing something like that as a daily exercise, you know, 10-word or 20-word poem, a haiku or whatever, and you do that every day, you find that your subconscious begins to shape things that you see. And you're standing at the bus stop going, oh, that's 17 words, you know, and
yeah, wonderful.
It molds you. Your subconscious is taken over, so that when you sit down to write, you've got that pattern there. So looking at form is those short forms is a very good way to discover what you can do.
Yeah, wow.
And I would say perhaps also to go with the idea of limiting your number of words, you can just start small, really, focus on small objects and small moments of time, rather than wanting to tackle all the big stuff all at once, because you'll just be completely overwhelmed with all the things that you want to write about yourself and about the world. But if you just take something which may not even look as if it's you know, full of potential, and just, you know, try a few words about it and keep trying regularly, taking small objects and small ideas, then you will suddenly find one day that you've written quite a lot of meaningful stuff.
Wow.
Go to the library and ask people if they know about writing groups.
Absolutely. We love that answer. Absolutely.
Yeah, oh, well, I can say it. Go to John and Steph's workshop.
Yeah. Another big one. Yeah, absolutely. We're so rich around Kirklees with writers groups and writers. It's wonderful. And yeah, the workshops that you run. And I know that I've had the pleasure of being in one of the cafe writers group that's Huddersfield Mission. I haven't been able to be there recently, obviously, but again, absolute brilliant, doing lots of little exercises there. I'm really conscious of the time, and it's 25 to 8 now. So what would you prefer to do? Would you like a quick coffee break, or would you like to go straight into the live mic session and Angela and I will jump out and leave you to it? Which would you prefer?
I'm quite happy to go straight ahead.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I think that's what we'll do, because we had a bit of a coffee break earlier, which everybody will have been able to stretch the legs, and obviously now it's really what everyone's been waiting for. So the live mic, which Angela and I are going to disappear off screen and leave John, Julia and Steph to talk a little bit and introduce the poems that they're doing and organise themselves, and we're just going to sit back and listen. Yay. So give us a shout if you need anything, but otherwise we'll pop back at 5 to 8 and just sit quietly in the background until you're finished. Okay, see you soon.
We'll see you soon. Okay, well, I think I'm going to start. I'm Stephanie Bowgett. I taught in Huddersfield for many years and then worked for the Ethnic Minority Achievement Team. So I've actually dealt quite a lot with children who are the children of refugees and asylum seekers, but also children who are second generation settlers into Huddersfield. And I think, as I said a bit earlier, I also have some experience myself of moving around a lot and feeling not as though I necessarily belong in a place. The first poem that I chose to read came from one of the questions that we were asked, which was about what would you take if you had to choose something to take from the house. And this was an exercise I did with children. And this was a little girl called Samara, who was 8 at the time. And the thing that she chose was a bolt of silk. And this is my poem on Samara's story. Samara says, "There's a bolt of silk in the attic, the colour of the juice of pomegranates, the colour of blood in water." Samara says that when she's sad, she takes it from its tissue, strokes the oily folds, imagines that she feels her grandmother's hands on hers, hears her voice weaving stories of India, Pakistan. Samara says she gave her this to wear at her wedding. The fabric drapes her small form, heavy with gold embroidery, coiled as history. She is startled by the ghost of the bride she will be. Samara says she will have mehndi on her hands, her feet. Samara's grandparents married for love, 2 refugees fleeing India. There was no one left to tell them they couldn't. Samara says Samara says her grandmother would never call Pakistan home, couldn't settle in the cold stone of Yorkshire, longed for lemon trees and elephants, the parents cut down in front of her. Samara says that when she was dying, she became a girl again, called her son by her brother's name, called for her mother, said she was going home. So many relatives came that Eid. Samara says they had to take the doors off the hinges, set them as tables. When she takes the silk in the attic from the tissue, she thinks of skies the colour of the juice of pomegranates, the colour of blood in water. Samara says, when she is sad, this is what she does. This is who she is. Okay. sorry, I'm being assaulted by a small black and white cat as I read, which is why I lost my concentration. On the same thing, I'm going to a more personal memory now, because I was taken to Germany by my parents and I missed my grandmother greatly. And I always had a really big bond with her. And my grandmother didn't have very much, but she would always give time and she would give ideas. And this is one of the things she did to make me feel that she was thinking of me. Ties. Grandma crocheted strings to keep my mittens safe, sewn to either end, threaded through the sleeves of my Robinhurst gabardine. They dangled past my hands. My shadow was a four-pawed monster, invincible. She made lots of strings, many more strings than I had mittens, posted them to Germany, packets of rainbows addressed to Miss Stephanie Silver Plymouth. I loved them, hoarded, knotted, plaited, sorted by colour, texture, length. Grandma scoured wool shop bins for exotica, made each string different. The best ones sparkled, had flecks of real gold, and one, a knobbly pink yarn, had special knots I worried between thumb and finger to hush me to sleep at night. Each string had a story. This navy marls are Eric's Sunday jumper, the cherry red angora from that Tammy of our Edie Peedles. I got the egg yolk yellow for your Teddy's new trews. Battleship grey, Gramps' boring balaclava. Chains from home. And Grandma, her hook at work on shocking pink nylon, 3-ply fawn, chunky angora, fleck double knitting, never stopped crocheting, string after string, keeping me and my mittens safe. Okay. I wrote a poem in response to when President Trump started putting Mexican children in cages on the border. And I saw a news item about a little girl called Angel, and this is the poem. Interestingly, it came from a workshop exercise that one of the members of our workshop suggested, which was the line, "She has perfect skin." Skin. She has perfect skin, the colour of caramel. She is 5 years old. Her name is Angel. She has been wrapped in silver. She has perfect skin. Her mama rubs jojoba oil on her skin after each bath to keep her dimpled elbows and knees soft, blows raspberries on her tummy, tickles her toes to make her giggle. Her name is Angel. This room has bars. She has been wrapped in silver. She is 5 years old. She is crying in the wrong language. Other girls wrapped in silver cry in the room with bars, but Angel is alone. Her skin is 2 shades too dark for the men with guns. She has perfect skin. Her mama once cried to see her skin pierced to shoot small gold stars into each lobe. The day she was christened, the day the whole street sang for her and aunties and uncles danced her on their knees. Her name is Angel. She is 5 years old. Her skin is 2 shades too dark. They have taken away her rosary. They have taken away her mama. She is crying in the wrong language. She has perfect skin. Okay, and the last one I'm going to read is one I wrote some time ago about, it was initially about a tower in Glasgow where asylum seekers were housed. It is there no longer, but there are many similar edifices all over the country, I'm sure. This is the tower on Red Road. This is the tale of Adam shot down in front of his wife and his infant son in Darfur, where he was a wanted man, returned from the tower on Red Road. This is the spot where Faisal was knifed for being Iraqi, escaped with his life, but now he fears for his children and wife. They're not safe in the tower on Red Road. This is where Blessing banged her head as they pulled her out of her midnight bed and the arms of her mum, who was cuffed and led away from the tower on Red Road. These are the scars on the souls of a man who was packed in a boat and a crate in a van, sold his mother's gold to escape the Sudan for a life in the tower on Red Road. These are the people who think it's okay to forbid him to work to earn his way and condemn him to live on a $5 a day in the crumbling tower on Red Road. These are the flowers laid on the ground where the 3 smashed bodies of Russians were found, refused asylum, given 21 days to vacate the tower on Red Road. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm going to read next. I am an editor as well as a poet. I edit a magazine called Pennine Platform, which welcomes submissions from new writers and local poets, anyone around the north of England. So that might be a useful place for you if you want to embark on the sometimes often fraught experience of getting your work into print. But there's a long journey before that, I think, for most people, while they write out about things which they need, if you like, to get off their chest, and while they read. That's the other thing, read, as John said. 12 years ago, there was a terrible earthquake in Haiti, and I wrote this poem which looks at how I personally have not experienced these appalling events or a range of other different traumas. Sometimes listing things that you haven't done is quite revealing. This is called Providence. I have not stumbled down a street in Haiti with only half the skin on my back. I have not been taken out of school and taught to use an AK-47 on my family. I have not spent my adulthood locked up for a crime I did not do. I have not been given HIV from a contaminated blood transfusion. I have not eked my 3-year life out eating wallpaper. I have not handled methadone or strapped on explosives. I have not got God, but I have got to 53 and walked through Chapeltown and known, and sometimes known. I sometimes find myself, well, quite often actually, writing about birds. And they are, of course, a great symbol of freedom, and they cross continents. We often think they do so for the fun of it, but they do so as a survival strategy out of necessity. So I'm going to read this poem, which actually came from one of Stephen John's wonderful workshops and was not about refugees ostensibly, but I think about paths. So I embarked on this poem about a path, and it became a poem about migrancy, if you like. The knowledge. The birds have paths they follow through the air as urgently as city strap hangers, each arc from nest to bough to open ground determined by the day's light rations and the hour's need to build, to mate, to roost, to outdo predators. By hedges, fences, fields and lanes, then up on thermal elevators, over rooftops, along valleys, towards estuaries, one wingtip angled to the sun, they surge along magnetic corridors as unmarked and beyond our fenced imaginings, as when the earth's first migrant wings beat down horizons, ridge by ridge, sea after sea, in search of fresh springs, kinder hemispheres. And another about a bird which was persecuted to extinction in this country and was not seen here for some 500 years. But recently, at long last, attitudes have changed and they have been reintroduced. And there's not many people, certainly in the north of England, who haven't seen a red kite overhead at some point. And when I mention Har Hills, this is Hare Hills in Leeds. I lived in Leeds, quite near Hare Hills, for many years. Red kite over Hare Hills Lane. When the kite builds, look to lesser linen, is a quote from The Winter's Tale about how they will pinch things off washing lines. 10 seconds at the lights present a sight unseen in Leeds since Shakespeare's day, when these Har Hills were bare and grey, oakwood, just an oak wood. Stranger, welcome back from your diaspora. As gulls tow fishing ports inland, this hawk brings open vistas, promontories, visions of a world elsewhere. Above the vying signs, Electro Town, your lone shop, lot of properties, she soars off kilter like a toy kite in the diesel fret, pinpointing a washing line, a risky rat, 2 skips behind the Polski slep. From this fraught junction of the disparate, pluck hope that the improbable is possible. Tonight she'll tuck a Hello Kitty glove into the twigs to signal nest on song. Tides turn, hearts change. It need not take so long. And lastly, I think this comes from my own experience of the many house moves as a child. At one point, we moved from a 60s housing estate to a Coronation Street tiny terrace, into a caravan in the back of somebody's garden, into those people's front bedroom, and then into a bungalow. And that was all in the space of 9 months. Transit. The walls have folded themselves in awkward places. The floorboards answer your step in different voices, choked with pieces of strangers' lives. There's a room above where before there was none, and none below where before there was one. The bed must settle into this foreign space as you shift in its sheets which already smell alien. The road has crossed to the other side, the back door moved to the front, and the sun has gone the wrong way round to morning. Thank you.
Once upon a time, she said, and the room filled up with deer that talked, fiddle tunes from fairy mounds, ancestors who had lived in a house built round a tree, stones that shifted in the half-dark, a king's daughter sailing to the furthest island, the scent of soup drifting from a cave mouth, a fox who knew a secret that could only be told when the orphan came home from years beyond the hills and the wide sea. When she'd gone, the children settled down to sleep, and in the darkness dreamed or saw the glint of fairy gold, heard teasing birdsong, a bird that always flitted on, always just beyond sight, always deeper into the thickets ahead. That poem's about the stories and songs that my mother told us, and about Scottish and Irish folk history. And my grandfather was born in a house with a tree growing through the roof in Ireland. And stories are things that get carried from generation to generation and from place to place. This next poem is a lockdown poem, and it was when the first easing of lockdown last summer, when we were able to go to the park again. Generations, it's called. The summer evening stroll in the park will pass as today's exercise. No joggers at this time of day. Families with prams and scooters and other grey couples, unmasked, we all nod and smile. Bikes and boards throng the skate park, busy and noisy as a cliff face gannetry. Above the ramps in midair, a boy's bike hovers, scissors, chops shapes. On the field, two middle-aged men in shalwar kameez, they look like brothers, play cricket, batting against a squad of sons and nephews. The oldest cousin is a fast bowler, mean, his team all placed precisely. We pass a stocky 10-year-old outfielder. Are you winning, I ask, and he says, not yet. And just with Julia mentioning Har Hills there, reminded me of a poem of mine which has got birds in it, as most of my poems do. And it also has the word har in it. It's a Scottish word. It means a sea mist. And this is something that happened to me in 1963, or something I observed. And I've called it The Narrow Road to the Deep North, which is the title of a Japanese story from the 16th century, as far as I remember. Sitting in the shelter of a summer doorway, watching steam from my tea drift away through rain, I suddenly want the invisibility of the road, the distance of days, months, the year I turned home, a winter night in the far north. A gull flew out of the fog and into the fog behind me, slow, the first of a single file, hesitant as refugees, each following the shape in front through a space with no paths. More than 100 threaded the place. I closed my eyes before they stopped. Each bird was silent, the world without colour, the untraceable line through the Har to the sea. And I would like Steph to join me in this poem.
Okay.
I did it right, which is a reworking of words of a child refugee, little girl who was 5 when she was taken from London to Syria. Her parents joined Daesh, and she was, at the time of this interview, living in a Syrian refugee camp. She's talking about recent events. The parts that Steph has are her remembering her childhood, yes, before the great trauma, and also her aspirations. And it's called Amira Wants Her Own Garden. We were living in tents. There wasn't that much food. We were sitting in this place, my brother and sister.
I go to a park. I go to a fun fair.
There was a little house and a big dusty mountain, and behind it, everybody was dead.
I go to a restaurant. I go to a centre.
In the morning, they were bombing. We took our stuff and we were walking.
I go to my grandmum's house.
It was all getting on fire, so we had to walk out, and in front of us, everyone who was not killed. Everything he could find, he was hitting with bombs, and there was guns. They were hitting so much we had to run. We were walking on top of this big mountain. So then my mum died, my littlest brother and my sister.
It was all getting on fire.
He was running up because he knows my mum was dead there. He just ran in and went down, and the little house broke and everything went on fire, so he died. When I grow up, I want to get fruits from the tree.
I'd like to get watermelon. I'd like to get strawberries. I'd like to get cherries. I would like to get blueberries. I'd like to get apple and orange and banana.
Thank you, Steph. And this next poem is observing a moment and what a childhood should be like. The boy plays, kneeling, runs a commentary only he hears. Things scattered around him are reached as they are needed until a new idea happens. Then up springs Jack. His body trots through rooms, weaves round big people, trails his brainy head, which is carried along by his private smile. And I'd just like to finish with a haibun. A haibun is a mixture of prose and poetry, and it's part of it. It's called Walking with the Weeping Sisters, which is something which is done on Holocaust Memorial Day with giant puppets representing people who have suffered atrocities, and mostly refugees these days. And we walk down through town with these puppets. We pass between cafe drinkers and a sleeping bag huddled in a shop doorway. In the warmth of the university, the Kindertransport woman, gracious and witty, shows pictures of her family laughing before she was barred from school, her brother deleted from the university, the eternal farewell to her parents, a rebuke to the arrogant. After 80 years, she is making us laugh. After her, other testimonies, the Roma boy in his England sweatshirt, the Syrian woman, the man from Burundi, the Kurdish woman, the Serbian woman. Scrolls are unrolled for each one. The school children give their messages of tolerance and hope. Don't make war, the boy says, make chocolate. The frail, delicate rabbi, in his beautiful, strong voice, sings Kaddish for all the dead, but first in German, in a voice that hushes the whole, Brahms' lullaby. When he has finished, he has created a silence with a magnetic force we can feel. It lasts for minutes. There may not be 6 million buttons, but everyone counts. A river, treasure, ordinary things. Thank you very much.
That's to all of you. A big round of applause and a big thank you for being part of today's Poetry Dumpling. That was absolutely wonderful. I'm just looking at Angela because I tend to talk quite a lot. So just in case Angela wants to say anything before we end this evening.
Just thank you. I feel as though Kirklees Libraries have been really privileged this evening to have 3 such fantastic poets. Thank you so much for your really moving poetry. I really enjoyed it.
For letting us read again. We haven't read in public for years and years and years. And it's really good to hear Steph and Julia's collections of poems, the way people have put a collection together, to hear their voices and to kind of put the thought into what you're producing yourself. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I'm honoured to be part of this event.
Thank you. Well, it's been an absolute joy to have all three of you here. It really has. It's been wonderful. And if anybody's missed anything, they'll be able to catch up with it again as well later. Not the YouTube things, so we'll put the links on, but your poetry and some of your tips. I'm just going to bring a couple of comments up. Well, on all the platforms, basically, we've got consensus, which such great advice from the Albert poets. That's from the tips that you gave before you went on the live mic. So big thank you for that. So that's absolutely wonderful. We've got that multiplied. And I'm sure we'd like to welcome you back at some point, so everybody keep your eyes open for that. I'm just going to give a very quick mention about the next Poetry Dumpling, which we're planning on holding as a Yorkshire Day special. And Yorkshire Day is on the 1st of August. We're going to hold Poetry Dumpling as near as possible to the 1st of August, but because we've got a special guest and we're working in partnership with our wonderful writer in residence as well, it's taken a little bit of logistics to get the date all sorted out. So as soon as that's done, we'll start publicising it. But we're definitely going to be back with Poetry Dumpling for Yorkshire Day special. And again, a big thank you for joining us for the live mic and sharing sharing bits of your knowledge. I know you've got tons more. It was wonderful to get the tips from you today as well. And hopefully it's inspired many writers out there, people who weren't sure whether they were going to write or not, just have a go, give it a go and follow some of the advice that we've had today, because 10 words isn't too much. That's what I'm going to keep saying to myself. 10 words isn't that many. And I'm going to have a go. So again, thank you so much. A last round of applause. And we're going to get off now and enjoy the rest of our evening. So bye to everyone. And hopefully we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.